All right, we are live and well, yeah, I hope everybody, yeah. So today I'm going to teach again, but today I'm teaching about the Yugas, the process of Hindi reality and interpretation of time and human existence, yeah. We have kind of a lot in humanity that tries to explain how we exist, what we exist for, what we do in our life. Yeah, and it really is. It requires a great deal of enlightenment, a great deal of understanding, wisdom, a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, before that kind of comes together, and it's not really a happenstance thing. It's not just about becoming more enlightened. It's about the time. Yeah, it's about the time. So you kind of have to take in physics, relativity, MC squared, yeah, and how that gave us an understanding that light itself is fixed. Yeah, it has a set speed, a speed of light, and nothing in matter can go faster than light. Yeah. Or it doesn't exist. It just stops existing. Yeah, and we could see that. Einstein gave the theory. Well, what if you see a light coming with a train coming at you, and you hear the horn, and the horn takes so long, but yet the light kind of gets to you right away, and there's a certain time distance between the horn and the distance in the train. Well, what if that was relative to going out in space? And you were traveling at 1/4 the speed of light, yeah, and you turned around and came back, and you came back at the same speed. And his theory came up with the fact that you would come back younger than the people on the planet who are existing at a certain time cycle in relationship to light. Yeah, light travels at a certain speed of light, and on Earth we are set in specific time. Yeah. So when we travel away and we go through this speed of light and come back, we literally change our reality, our physical reality, even though we're from Earth. We come back to Earth and everybody else is dead and 150 years has passed. Yeah. And that's reality. That is reality. And that's only going at a fraction of the speed of light, turning around and coming back. Yeah. Everybody has gone years, if not a whole lifetime, or many lifetimes. Depends on how far we went and how fast we return back. Yeah, so that is a relative reality. We realize that now in physics. Yeah, but we also have that same relative reality sits in the quantum reality of God. Yeah, that time cycle, that we're in, which is relative to the speed of light. If you study the physics and sacred geomancy and things of that nature, you find out the pyramid represents the speed of light. It's mathematical equations found in it. The mathematical equations of the Earth. And phi ratio itself is connected to the speed of light. Yeah, it's built into it, like an imprint, as though everything is based on light. Everything is based on the speed of light. Yeah, but light controls one thing, and that's time. Yeah, it's the controller of time, because if we pass through that light and come back at a certain speed, time changes dramatically. Yeah, so time in itself is controlled by light. Yeah, so we can pass in and out, we can time travel, do all those sort of things, only by working within the physics of light. Yeah, and so it's a quantum reality. It doesn't fit our day-to-day reality, our fixed reality of laws and things. Where we go away for 100 years and we come back after 100 years, and everybody else is 100 years old, and you're 100 years old, but it's not true. Everybody's dead, been gone for quite a while, because time is reference to light, speed, yeah, and how material things are completely set in that, whether you're on planet Earth, or you're on the moon, or you're in a pyramid, or you're looking at a plant. You know, every single thing is set in the same law. Same law, yeah? So that law has a controlling element to it, that light, the light. And the light is a phi ratio, yeah? So we're all moving through time, through cycles of time. And we can't really see how that time works out. 2,000 years, you know, are we going through some change? We are, because we're in a relative state of time. And inside of us, inside of this whole thing, is God's mind, God's creative mind, yeah? And the further we get away from God's mind, when we go through this cycle of time, yeah, the less spiritual we become, the less dharma we have from God's mind. And it's telepathic, yeah? So yugas are seen in the Hindi relationship of spiritual masters who live on earth for tens of thousands of years, yeah, reincarnate, yeah, and their mind through their soul comes back into their body, and they continue this initiatory process telepathically, yeah, even though we all could be in a very, very bad, evil time, yeah, but these sages are outside of that, because the vibration in their mind is traveling at a point of light that is in reference to God. And it's not under the control of the material plane. And the material plane has yugas. Yeah? Some last 2,000 years, some last 4,000 years, some last 3,000 years. And each yuga has the representation of what it's like to be in God's presence. Yeah? If you're in the Kali Yuga, it's a very bad time, because then you're settled in with inhumane people, with inhumane thoughts, and dictators, and tyrants, and taxpayers, and owners of land, and all these materialistic things that are very oriented toward gain and materialism. Yeah, but that's the time of that yuga. Yeah. And that yuga is the Kali Yuga, and it lasts about 2,000 years, 2,400 years, yeah. Yeah. So then there's a yuga that comes, you know, more yugas. There's 4 total yugas, yeah. So the yuga that we're working with, that we're coming into, is the Satya Yuga. And the Satya Yuga is a telepathic, intuitive yuga, yeah, because we're getting closer to the presence of God, yeah. It's that time, yeah. And it's because it's set up in 4 separate sections, yeah. In your mind, you have the ability to relate, no matter where you're at in time, to keeping people in a safer place. So monasteries could be built, and universities of study, of scholars, of spiritual text, yeah. They can continue throughout time. So if we look back through history, we look back through ancient time, we find the most incredible things. We find the Great Pyramid. We find statues to Buddha and God and many different aspects of high spiritual society. And that's in ancient time. How's that possible? We haven't even reached that yet. We haven't come anywhere near it. So how could it be the past? Yeah. You have to really consider that, because you're just going to go nuts and you're going to go, oh, it's extraterrestrials, or we've been taken over by a bunch of demigods at some cycle of time. Yeah? And we, as a human race, aren't part of this. Yeah? That it has to be the coming of extraterrestrials or some kind of outside force, yeah, that gave us this past, whether it be the pyramid or whatever. But in reality, it's God's relationship to matter, yeah. In God's mind, it all matters, yeah. And God imprints on that, you know, a sacred reality of that you don't need to read books, and you don't need to struggle to go through your life the way you do. You know, that when you get to a certain yuga, you receive your information telepathically, yeah. All your education comes telepathically. And as you're passing from one yuga to the next, The Yuga that breaks away from a Yuga where there are no masters and there is no telepathic connection. Yeah? I'm losing picture. There. Still got that one. You know? And those, in each Yuga, you know, all 4 Yugas, they're very, very different than each other. Yeah? And there's a Tetra Yuga, yeah? A Sakya Yuga, yeah? There's a Kali Yuga, yeah, yeah. And each Yuga has its relationship of consciousness that changes the mind as to how we're going to behave, how we're going to live through cycles. So imagine you go back during the time of Rome. We go back to the time where we get Caesar, and we read about the Senate, and we read about, you know, how Caesar, you know, became a dictator through this thing called democracy. Created in Rome. Yeah, Socrates and all that built up to it, leading to this possibility. Yeah, but it was usurped by evil. Yeah, and so that evil, instead of there being a democracy, it fell. Yeah, and Rome came under Caesar, and Caesar, the dictator, said, "Okay, I'm Caesar forever. There is no more voting me in or out. I'm Caesar forever." And that's what happened. Caesar said he's Caesar forever. And that was a representation of the time. An exact representation of the time. Yeah. And it had to happen that way. It had to come through that cycle. Yeah. And it expressed in that cycle. And it continued as it went on. We go into the Dark Age and the 1300s and, you know, other periods of time. And those are more and more and more and more of that dark cycle of people becoming more materialistic and more selfish. Yeah. So here's some teachings on the Yugas.
Historians have long sought a key with which to unlock the secrets of the past, but the key has eluded them because they have looked only to the outer man. Only when we make the correlation of inner consciousness to outward behavior does the seeming chaos of history fall into a discernible pattern. It is not, however, the pattern most modern historians and archaeologists expect to find. The Yugas describe a cycle of human development that not only predicts highly advanced ages in the future, but indicates that they have occurred in the past as well. The Yuga cycle includes ages less advanced than our own, ages full of ignorance and darkness, and ages so much more advanced than our own present age that we cannot fully comprehend them. And, as is implicit in the meaning of the word cycle, we learn that once mankind's peak is reached, there is inevitable decline. And once mankind's darkest point is reached, there is inevitable advancement. The Yugas are a tradition in India that goes back thousands of years. Sri Yukteswar does not base his understanding of the Yugas on tradition alone, however. Sri Yukteswar's insights spring from self-realization. His understanding of the Yugas is born of deep intuition, yet his explanation is clear and succinct, and, as he intended, approachable by the Western scientific mind. Sri Yukteswar outlines the Yugas in the introduction to his book, The Holy Science. Writing in 1894, Sri Yukteswar predicted several developments that have since come to pass. The rapid development of knowledge in the 20th century and the discovery that energy underlies all matter. Sri Yukteswar's explanation predates Einstein's E = mc squared by over 10 years. These were not predictions in the usual sense of the intuitive perception of singular events. Rather, Sri Yukteswar's predictions arose from an understanding of the consequence of the change in mankind's consciousness from one yuga to the next. The most recent transition from one yuga to the next was fully completed in the year 1900 AD, just 5 years before Einstein's conceptions fundamentally changed our worldview. Sri Yukteswar's prediction, however, was not about Einstein as an individual. Had it not been Einstein who perceived and formulated the relationship between energy and matter, it would have been someone else. What Sri Yukteswar predicted was the inevitability that this knowledge would come to light, due to the fundamental change in the consciousness of mankind taking place at that time.
So the principle behind this is that everybody is spiritual. Yeah. That everything is spiritual. And God is everything. Yeah. And that influence that comes from behind God, with God, is the mind of God. You know nothing about God until you know the mind of God. And you don't get to know the mind of God until you reach telepathy and intuition. Yeah. Because in the mind of God doesn't talk to you, doesn't say, do this, Joey, It gives impressions. You see things that need to get done. And you also see how they get done. And you see what you need to do to get them done. It keeps going. Yeah. The whole process, your entire education, keeps going from the mind of God. It's a telepathic orientation, shifting from our chakras that were unhealthy, that we wouldn't have this receptivity. We would be moved and drained and go through all these illnesses and everything that we go through in life. We don't know the benefit of the future, the cycle, what happens when we reach this cycle of time. And it really, that it was ushered in 1900. So there was a big shift in the possibility of psychic awareness. And by 1950, we had hippies, and they're on a psychedelic trip. They're open up to the mind of God. They want love. They want peace. They want to understand. They want to practice yoga. They want to do other things rather than the things that we're all moved to do, because they're actually picking up, recapitulating out of the mind of God what it is that's natural in the future, and it's coming from the past. We've been on this thing 1,000 times. It's been going around and around and around and around and around. So we get an enormous amount of our building of our character comes from this mind of God. So we're here now in the Kali Yuga. And this is a bit what the Kali Yuga is about.
Modern historians, we can clearly see the pattern of devolution and evolution suggested by the Yugas. We can see a descent followed by an ascent rather than a straight upward line of progress. Much of recorded history is political. That is to say, it records the rise, fall, consolidation, and disintegration of empires, countries, cities, and cultures. What most of us learned in school is that empires came and went more or less randomly as a result of ever-shifting circumstances. Leadership, trade, climate, and the technology of war among the most prominent. Yet, if we stand back from the detail of political history, we can see a pattern in the seemingly random rise and fall of kingdoms and empires. See Figure 2 in the bonus PDF. Consolidation of political empires through the middle years of descending Kali Yuga, followed by their disintegration through the ending years of descending Kali Yuga and the beginning years of ascending Kali Yuga, and then another period of consolidation of political empires through the middle years of ascending Kali Yuga. The Roman Empire serves as a good example of the pattern of consolidation followed by disintegration in descending Kali Yuga. See Figure 3 in the bonus PDF. Rome's fortunes began near the beginning of the descending Kali Yuga and ended almost exactly at Kali Yuga's lowest point, 500 AD. Rome began as a republic with a semi-democratic system of government. Historians usually cite the founding of the Republic of Rome around 500 BC as the beginning of the Roman Empire. The political center of the Republic was the Senate, a ruling body made up of two representative groups, the plebeians or commoners and the patricians or wealthy class. The Senate ably managed the affairs of the Roman state for many years. In the early centuries of Kali Yuga, various dictators, as they were known, because they could dictate to the Senate, were appointed by the Senate to help the Republic weather a crisis or a war. When the crisis ended, the normal rule by the Senate was subsequently completely restored. Over time, however, the dictators became stronger and stronger until by the 1st century BC, Julius Caesar was declared dictator for life.
Yep. And don't we have that now? We have it in China. Yeah. We have it in Korea. We just got rid of Trump. Yeah. And he loves the guy in Russia and China and Korea. And all of these people are the very rare people, other than ones in Africa and other places, who are really, really, really evil and obvious, blatant dictators. Yeah. But the process is that we're in a yuga that always comes back and shows itself in the same way. Yeah. And those are purgings, because people reincarnate. Yeah. You can't just get rid of things. Yeah. People reincarnate, and they have to be evolved or rejected. Yeah. And when humanity doesn't reject, when humanity falls under them and actually praises them, like Trump, then obviously we're involved in a process of self-initiating delusions of grandeur. People create great big QAnon and all these different things go on simultaneously, and at the same time we have all these different outings of people in Hollywood and other places that are being busted for their processes with women, or whoever their pedophilia process is, or things that are being found now that were going on normally, because of dictators. All those people were dictating people to do these things. Yeah. Just like the guy had pedophilia. He dictated those little girls to do these things. That's a dictator. That's what a dictator is. Yeah. So there's a lot of that. And we don't know that, that this is what we are in process of. We are in a process where an incredible lack of dharma, an incredible lack, is existing on the planet, right here in front of us. Yeah. And yet I'm sitting here trying to illustrate and explain it. Yeah. And I overshadow these people to read books by Yugas and do these YouTubes, to make it easier for you to get the messages and the teachings that are really necessary to unlock the spells, the curses that are placed upon humanity during this yuga. It's all psychic. It's all very astral. And yet we're not astral people. We're intuitive, telepathic people. And we're governed by intuitive telepathy. It governs us. Even our desires of what we're going to do in life. Why are we incarnated, and what should I be doing in my life? And then you're directed to it, to destiny. And all these wonderful outcomes happen. And in that process, we choose, because of higher mind, a better world. But it's something that's going to happen to us. And it's going to happen because what I'm doing, with the tools and with the pyramids and with Shambhala and everything that I'm doing, is to clear the way, heal the influences that are happening, and it's impossible for them to heal without a long-term failure, a war, a lot of injustice, a lot of people slowly but surely being caught, hundreds of years this could take, or it could be fostered and moved, telepathically, because the future is based on telepathy. It's not based on materialism. So I'm coming in order to change everything by stepping into the future, representing the future, doing everything that is going to happen in the future, every single thing, doing it now, and that's giving you an alternative, against this yuga that you're in, and you're cursed by. And it's going to last as long as you allow it to last. Yeah. But it's all dependent upon your telepathy. So it's a matter of exchanging that telepathy for an astral plane reality. And astral plane reality is based on our thought forms. How do our thought forms govern things? And each one of the yugas moves us to certain degrees of our psychicism. One of them is the ability of magnetic attraction. A yuga does that. A whole yuga, you get to experience magnetic attraction. A whole yuga, and you can get to a point to where you literally can create lightning and all kinds of stuff, and it could be very dangerous. A whole yuga is based in that. And people get to that, and it's like a crazy time. But it's not based on all evil. It's based on higher levels of psychicism and thought form manifestation. That we actually are in control of matter. And we're going to slowly but surely, God does that. God is that. God controls all things. And as we learn all this, we learn to adapt to God. And we learn to adapt to the reality of change. So when we go from one yuga to the next, we end up as the very few sages that are existing at the time. And they grow in numbers for every yuga, and it makes it easier and less horrifying for the whole of the world, as this evolves forward. But we're moving now into a new yuga, one that is directly in relationship to telepathy, not just lower psychicism or something like that. So let me show you this one. First, I showed you the Kali Yuga. That super sucks. That's where you're sitting. That's where we're coming out of as of 1900. There's another yuga.
Their homes, public buildings, and temples probably won't be overly large or ostentatiously ornate. Beauty of form and harmony in relation to nature will most likely shape their architecture, since their expanded awareness will make them keenly aware of such subtleties. With Treta Yuga's much smaller population, one could also expect that they will settle into the best real estate available. Beautiful, healthy, and bountiful. Treta Yuga man may well spend a considerable amount of time out of doors in close touch with nature. Individuals will be guided to develop along the natural lines of their innate qualities. As a result, society may stratify. Those with Treta Yuga consciousness will need to develop their abilities in accordance with their awareness. Those who are still primarily in Dwapara Yuga consciousness will need to develop their abilities in accordance with their awareness, as will those individuals who are more in tune.
So you need to understand this. It's not based on the yuga. It's based on your consciousness at the level of a yuga. So if all this time, through all the yugas, one has developed a consciousness during the time of Treta Yuga or Santa Yuga or any of the yugas, if you happen to have the consciousness of the Kali Yuga, which is the worst, then you're going to have a really hard time adapting to these higher spiritual yugas. You're going to be the idiot. You're going to be the slow person getting through it, but it's going to last for 4,000 years. And you might start catching on the last 300-400 years, And you might, because there's no other place to go. Everybody's spiritual. Everything is beautiful. Everybody is a healthy place. It's all amazing, And there's like 20 million still left that hasn't ascended into a higher level of that consciousness. They're still stuck behind in the other yuga consciousnesses, because you have to go through each yuga and establish that consciousness to get through the next yuga and establish that consciousness. It doesn't just come with the yuga. The yuga is supplying the consciousness. It is a closeness to God. But it doesn't mean that it's gone once that yuga goes. It means that you hold that consciousness, just like Yukteswara, or Maitreya, or Krishna, or any incarnation of the avatar. And you read the books in the Hindu Vedas, you'll find that the avatars appear through all the yugas. And they go through all kinds of weird stuff, but it's applied to the Yuga. And the avatar is still the avatar, still highly conscious, still fully aware. Nothing is lost in the mind and consciousness and spiritual activity of the avatar, no matter what Yuga it is. Because they're based on another level of consciousness, where they're immortal, they're eternal, they're beyond the limitation of light. They are the light. And they're standing in the midpoint of that light. So there's a symbol to that. This it's a pyramid. And you imagine the light comes from the very point to the top of the pyramid. And that's where God's at. God's the point of the light at the top of the pyramid. And from that, God's mind creates the pyramid, which is all things in form and matter. Every single thing is phi ratio. Every single thing. No matter where you go, no matter who you are, no matter what you are, as long as you are in material existence, you are in God's mind. God's mind is a pyramid. So imagine God is the capstone of that pyramid, and God is self-realized, self-actualized. God is God. So this is what it's like.
I am a messenger of light. I am a pilgrim on the way of love. I do not walk alone, but I know myself as one.
God's in nothingness,
with all great souls,
in non-existence,
and one with
in
them
void.
Service.
And
Their
then
strength
manifest.
is mine.
And
Their
that manifests
strength
the
I
truth.
claim.
It's not God, making
My
something happen.
Is
It's the
theirs,
truth
and this I
that
freely
comes from
give.
the void that's made manifest by God's
A
ability
I
to
walk on
let
earth.
the truth manifest. And this beginning
I
of magnetic
represent
attraction,
the one.
beginning of thought form building. So this point expands into the existence of each and every soul. Halfway down the pyramid, a clear step is formed, and this step in every single soul has ever existed is manifested in that process. So as all of existence goes on, no matter what yuga you're in. It all depends on your consciousness within that pyramid. How close are you to God? Are you at the base? Have you fallen below the pyramid? Are you stuck in samsara? Have you found your way to hell?
The will of God moves the world.
So that's my expression of that. That the reality behind everything is based on this light, on light itself. And if you take light and put it into matter, it becomes sacred geometric form. It becomes thought form. Here we are, human beings, we can think. But in our process, we can think through lower nature rather than higher nature. We can think through our emotions, rather than our heart. Which is strong and courageous and understanding, has empathy and compassion. All these things that are based on our higher mind, bringing ourselves up into our higher nature, which takes us out of our emotional nature, which is very personal and very selfish, and it raises us up into our higher nature. This happens. This is what goes on in the yugas. Yeah? It's the nature of God's creation. Yeah? And it's constant. So we're never off this wheel. Yeah? Even when we get into the Kali Yuga, those who are the saints get to help. They are of service. And they learn that in one of the yugas. One of the yugas is based totally on developing service. It's a yuga of service. And you benefit from it. You get to benefit, and you learn to step away from all these misfortunate ideas of having a career and all that. And takes you into an action of service, what it is in life that is need of service. And then you get to be fulfilled by fulfilling your need to be of service. Yeah? And God, telepathically, intuitively at first, moves you through the actions of being able to be of service, by being kind, by being considerate, by changing, your ambition, changing your ego, to a more soulful character. So everything is building character so that you're standing full like Christ. Yeah. And your head is in the same place God's head's at. Yeah. You're sitting inside of a pyramid. Your whole body is built as a pyramid. Yeah. So now your body can become a temple. So it doesn't matter what yuga you're in. You're a sanctuary, human beings, sages, saints. You can read about this, throughout history. We can find saints and sages during the darkest times. Tibet, some of the worst and evilest times on earth. At the same time, Tsongkhapa was developing virtue. Yeah. At the worst and evilest times on earth, Padmasambhava was manifested on a lotus. And gave teachings to humanity, and teachings to students that came from India who were previous students to Buddha, who reincarnated and waded through this terrible Kali Yuga. Yeah? So all the time, God is gracing us, beyond materialism, through the light, in a way in which it's super spiritual, metaphysical, manifested. Can't believe it. Yeah? Jesus, how did you get born without having the need of a father? How is that possible? Padmasambhava, how did you manifest 9 years old and fully enlightened on a lotus? How is that possible? How did you do that? Yeah? And it is God constantly giving us treasure after treasure after treasure. At all times, that's dharma. There is always dharma. It depends on teaching. Yeah? Dharma is initiated by the teacher. You'll learn this in every yuga. Yeah? As you go from one yuga to the next, you'll find, one yuga in Kali Yuga, you go, well, I'll go to university and I'll learn from a chef, and I'll learn from a doctor to be a doctor, and I'll learn from a shoemaker to be a shoemaker, and I'll learn from all these different things. That's the Kali Yuga. Yeah? And then you get to another place, to another yuga, and you move on to a higher dimension of your consciousness. Yeah? And you start having these developed awarenesses. Which is the teaching I'm giving the whole planet right now. A lot of people are heading for the mountains. A lot of people are getting tiny houses. A lot of people are heading out in vans and really getting themselves into nature. Yeah, people breaking away from business and breaking away, and even though they don't want to break away, their business is being torn away. Yeah, and their lifestyle is becoming minimalized. Yeah, and the kind of bills and the extreme expenses and all the things that we were in just 2 years ago, is dramatically going to be changed within the next 5 years. As we step back into it, housing will be half the cost, businesses will be given away almost, just to get us back into business, just to get things started again. So there's going to be an enormous shift in the process of whether or not we move from one level of consciousness to another. And all of it's being moved by reincarnation. So imagine, here's this one. You've seen the movie Little Buddha, and the process of my incarnation is a process of bringing the incarnation of a Satya Yuga man into the world. Yeah, there's a Tetra Yuga man. Yeah, there's a Kali Yuga man. Yeah, there's all these yugas, and which one are you? Yeah, and I'm Satya Yuga. Yeah, that's me. I'm always that. No matter what incarnation I'm in, I am always representing that Satya Yuga. Yeah, because that's when everybody is capable of walking with me, talking with me, being able to listen to me, build the same thing I build. And there are 4 yugas. 3 of those yugas are under my teaching. 3 of them. Only 1 yuga is everything separated, and that's the Kali Yuga. It's the lowest realm of yuga, but still I'm there. Jesus was there. Gautama Buddha was there. All the teachings of Tibetan Buddhism was there. All the relationships that have gone on in time, since the time of the beginning of the Kali Yuga. Many, 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 many events have happened. Yeah, but what changes us is the representation, telepathic representation of a being that represents the next yuga, the highest yuga. So we've had teachers, we've had like Dalai Lama, we've had all these different people, and they're of different yugas. They're not of the Satya Yuga. They have a belief system that goes with this and goes with that, and they fit those particular yugas. But we're not going into that yuga. There are people who are coming out of a lesser reality and are in that yuga, but they're not free. It's in the Satya Yuga that you become free. And we're entering into that. So by me taking birth, it gives me the opportunity to live out my birth, live out my life. Think the things I think, do the things I do, which are extremely strange, extremely. For me, in 1950, to be incarnated, doing the things that I did, things I talked about, all the things that I did, from there to today, are a Satya Yuga man. Nothing like anybody else walking around, not another human being. Everybody else is this, or just coming out of Tetra Yuga, this and that. And people really get a lot from them. A lot of teachers, are from many yugas. And they help, but they're not the truth. They're not the final truth. The final truth is when you're set free, when you're telepathically given enough light in order to release your curse so that you could be free to go through your life. And that's why the Satya Yuga lasts for over 4,000 years. The other ones are 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. This one's 4,000. That's an enormously wonderful thing. So I come right in the beginning of it in order to walk from this day on, and represent the Satya Yuga. So I explain why temples are the way they are, why pyramids are the way they are, why old ancient temples are built the way they are, why the pyramid was built the way it is, and what it aligns to, and how we align to the sacred geomancy of phi ratio and light, and all these things that are taught in higher teachings of other yugas, not the Kali Yuga, but other yugas. So every teaching that I'm giving is all the yugas coming out of the Kali Yuga, all of them, leading you up to the Satya Yuga, where I represent in my expression, the things I do, the things I say. People are going to do this sort of thing, These people are going to do this, and they're going to do it because they are the Yuga. They are, and they're going to reincarnate and become more and more that Yuga because of reincarnation and the presence that radiates out of me, because I represent all those yugas. So every single person, when they die in this life with me on the earth, when they come back in the full glory of whatever yuga they are. They could come back as a whole bunch of people who are out of the Kali Yuga and in Tetra Yuga and fully capable of living very, very clear lives of service. Millions and billions of people just reincarnate, and all of a sudden you're born in another yuga, because that's your truth. That's your truth. And you get that from the Lord that comes from the Satya Yuga. that brings everybody through the cycle, all the way through. And they always have this light leading them through and keeping them going throughout the whole thing. Yeah. So that's based in the Satya Yuga. And that happens the moment I take my incarnation. And that's what's going on in this one. So check this out. This is kind of cool.
What was your, going back to the early years, what was your family's heritage, Native American heritage?
Blackfoot and Cherokee. My dad was Blackfoot, my mom was half Cherokee.
So there were a lot of things going on when you were young that were...
Yeah. We weren't allowed to say we were Indian. Never mentioned being Indian. Because back then, you know, that was a bad thing to be. No one liked you. We're home. And these people come to the door and they said, "Is my mother there?" And I says, "Yeah." "Your father?" I said, "He's in the back room. Come on in." You know, we weren't allowed to let people in the house. I just told them, "Come on in." He said, "We're here to talk to you about your brother." And about that time, my folks come out in the living room and ran me up the hall to hold the other two kids back. And the conversation I heard was that they're here to come to take him back to Tibet to be educated. And my dad got upset about that. So what's wrong with the education here? Why would he want to go to Tibet? Because he's a chosen one, is the way they were putting it. And they were serious about taking him with them. And my folks, they just got fed up with it and ran him off. I didn't hear nothing else about that till a year later when they got a letter. And the letter stated that they're sorry that Buddha missed his opportunity to do this, and they'll check back in years, in the future. And as far as I know, they might have and might not have.
You ever see the film Little Buddha?
Yeah.
Was that kind of like?
Yeah. It was like that. That's when I first started thinking about this again, is when I seen that. And I thought, well, that's my brother. And it can't be because the time periods are all wrong in this. And I'm thinking, maybe that could have been him up there. Maybe it should have been.
So when they came and they were talking to your folks, you were made to go away.
Yeah. I kept sneaking up the hall so I could hear. I'd go from one door to the next, trying to hear what was going on. But they really shook my dad up. He got really upset, and my mom, she was basically laughing. She said, "This can't be real, it's candid camera, some stunt going on. Her brother put him up to it and stuff like that." Well, she checked, and as far as she knew, them people didn't exist to anybody in my family but Ronnie. He wanted to know who they were and what they wanted. He'd come down the hallway into the living room. He just went out the back door in the backyard and was looking through the sliding glass doors, trying to see what was going on. But no, there was no discussion. Anybody, none of my relatives, nobody. It was never brought up again. Until that letter. And I think my sister may have it. Because I know my mom kept it.
So it was like a letter from the Tibetan...
My mom and dad called him Buddha. Little Buddha. And that went on for several years. And then he opened a clinic or something in Oregon. And they called him the Messiah. He's opened up a clinic up in Oregon. He's the Messiah. And it was just a private joke between them two. I never knew what was going on, you know, what they were talking about. But it's what these people, the Tibetans, had said to him while they were there. You know, he's chosen for this, and he's supposed to do this and that. They were determined to get the point across to my folks that this is supposed to be, this has to be. You know, and they weren't taking no for an answer, and there were these two old people in my living room arguing with my folks about taking my brother. And when they left, you could just tell they were looking for him, you know. As far as I thought they were going to just go ahead and take him, but they really shook my dad up. But I didn't know what it was. You know, I didn't know Tibet or Dalai Lama or none of that stuff. None of us did. So it was, and I kept that story to myself till about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. Discussed it with him when we first started talking again. I'd asked him, I said, do you remember that? He says, oh yeah, I remember it, but nobody else does. And I don't know if he thought it was a story that my mom had made up or if it actually happened, because he was really young at the time. And before, what was it? Before my dad died, he got in touch with him. He knew my dad was dying. Hadn't been in touch with him for years. But he just called and said, you know, I know Dad's dying, yada, yada. Because he's suffering strokes, daily strokes, and he had cancer, and he was terminally ill. And everybody tried to find Buddha, you know, to let him know. And I've talked to everybody, and they said, no, we never got in touch with him. You know, how would he know what was going on? He knew the phone number, he knew the address, and what hospital he'd been in. He knew all three of them. I didn't even know him, you know.
When you were younger, were there things that you remember about
him being different?
Yeah.
Yeah. He was always different. He was always thinking. You know, he showed his intelligence way early, when he was like 12, 13 years old. He was able to do things that other people couldn't do. But if you asked him for a hammer or a screwdriver, he wouldn't know the difference between them. But you could talk about a constellation in the sky, and he'd know what you were talking about. You know, no one knew how he knew what he knew. You know, that was strange. And he wanted a sitar. He wanted to learn how to play sitar. I just learned when the Beatles come out what a sitar was, you know. And he wanted one of them, wanted to learn how to play it. He's always been intelligent. He's always been thinking ahead.
And that empathy, thinking about other people?
Yeah. He always wanted to help people. You know, I think that's how he got hooked up with these people, the Tibetans that came, because he just, you know, he talked to anybody. He was happy, he was go-lucky, and if you seemed interesting, he'd go talk to you. You know, find out, you know, what you are, whatever. If he'd have gone that way into the Indian nations, he'd probably be the greatest chief ever. You know, come to visit me in Las Vegas once and tried to hook him up with a job, but he wanted to go grow grass, not smoking grass, but the kind you eat. That, yeah. He'd crush it up, put it in little shot glass deals, and sell it to the health food stores. He'd make it a fortune. You know, and I said, you're growing grass? He says, yeah, try it. And it became a big thing in Las Vegas for a while. Everybody got health conscious. But he started that. I think he helped start the first, I think it was a holistic restaurant where they just served sandwiches on everything organic. And back then, back in the 70s, organic, you know, didn't exist. Nah, I ain't eating that, you know. Got to have the chemicals. That's when I learned the word holistic. That's the thing he does there in Kathmandu. He feeds the people. He feeds them, clothes them, houses them. He just amazes me. No matter what he does, it's gonna turn out right, and something good's gonna come out of it. He likes to help people. He cares about people, and he's a no bullshit guy. You know what he says, he means, and says this is gonna happen. It happened. And I said, he just, when he talks, you listen. You want to hear more. You want to hear what he has to say. And he's always been that way. Always held a conversation in a group of people. Everybody would eventually be around him, what's going on. His policy, do no harm. We grew up in a violent family, you know, and there was always someone getting hurt or someone getting beat up, you know, crap like that. But he back then he said, you know, why do we have to fight? You know, there's no reason to fight. I don't think he's been in maybe 2 fights in his whole life. But when I went to Vietnam, he kept telling me, why don't you go to Canada like everybody else? I don't want to. You know, Vietnam wasn't even a thing when I joined the service. It became a thing while I was in boot camp. That's when I learned about Vietnam. And by the time I got out of boot camp, he knew everything there was about Vietnam, about all the coups that's gone on there, and who the good guys were and who the bad guys were. And he flat told me, he says, you know, you're over there fighting a war against people that are defending their country. We're the invader. You know, and he put that out there. And it was a whole different concept. People weren't ready for that. And he had a couple rallies. Cesar Chavez spoke about him at one of his rallies. And I couldn't believe, here this guy from Mexico comes here trying to start a union for the Mexican laborers and get them decent pay. And he's talking about Buddha. You know, how he's seen through what he's done, what could be done. You know, they did a lot of testing in Davis University, and they tested a lot of monkeys. And he just couldn't see that happening. He always said, you know, one of these days I'm gonna let them monkeys out. Well, they got loose. But he'd be an advocate for something like that, for animals. Thanksgiving one year, we were having Thanksgiving dinner, and this big semi-truck come down our street, and no truck's supposed to be on that street. And Buddha went running out there and stopped the guy. You know, here's a little guy stopping his big 16-wheeler. And the guy says, what do you want? He says, you're not home having Thanksgiving dinner with your family? He said, no, gotta work. He said, wait here. He went inside, got a plate, and took it back out there and sat in the truck and ate with him. You know, that's the kind of character he was back there. That's a kid doing that. You know, and this guy was a stranger.
Yep. And then later, you know, I get enthroned. Yeah. So all of this is a process of what it's like in another yuga. you know. And it happens to me even though I'm in LA, living with a Native American family who's very afraid for people coming to take your kids away and take them off to schools and things like that. Very common thing for Native Americans. Not a right house to come to and say that, yeah. You know, so it was really something for my parents to have to go through that. And yet I still continued. When I went on to school, I had a 0, an F, a 0, never got higher than a D, yeah. And you think, you know, gosh, you know, I'm like a genius, you know, because I am, you know. But yeah, my information doesn't come the way your information comes to you, you know. I am led through an enormous amount of God consciousness, yeah. And where I'm interested, where I find interest, is where God leads me, you know. So it didn't mean the class I was sitting in or this or that. I would be more bored than any human being on earth. I would play games, I'd tear my desk apart, I'd take the door apart, I'd do anything but do my class, you know, because I was just so freaking bored. Yeah, and you know, so I got through it. 12 years of that crap, you know, and yet I never, maybe once or twice, got a grade of a C, you know, in wood shop or something, but not in something that matters if you're going to go off and get a job or something like that, yeah. And that didn't matter to me. You know, my whole process was that I knew that I was a yogi, you know, and that my information comes telepathically, and I couldn't explain it, even though I was a child, you know. So I know through my own experience that this Yuga, the process of the Yuga that brought me here, and the process of the Yuga that is coming out of me and going into you, you know, and all the work that I do, which represents every single Yuga, yeah, is a process that allows us to understand that we can get through anything, yeah. That the Yuga that we're in is the worst of the worst, but we're coming out of it. You know, so all the things that I'm illustrating are things that are coming with the higher telepathy, the higher ability for us to heal, the higher ability for us to receive new sciences, new technologies, new advancements that have nothing to do with corruption and crime and things of that nature. Nothing whatsoever, yeah? A complete different consciousness, because it's based on service. You know, when you're selfish, service isn't really part of it. You know, it's not a question, you know. It's not even in the situation. You know, when you go to school, you're not going to school for service. You know, you're going to school in order to compete, you know, and get your grades up and get the grades you think you need to get, you know. But didn't matter what I did. When I went to school, I was in service, and I served all the kids that were around me. I protected them. I spoke to them. I befriended them. I listened to all their problems. I was if you were in a wheelchair, I was the person who pushed your wheelchair. Yeah. If you had a problem, I was the person who sat with you when no one else did. That was me. It was just the nature of me, you know. And I, every year, didn't matter what school I was at, no matter if I was being inducted into the military, I was still a conscious objector during a Vietnam War, and a conscious objector, you know, due to the fact that I'm Satya Yuga. It doesn't matter what my circumstance is, you know, I'll bring the Satya Yuga into it, and I'll turn that wheel, you know. And when I'm existing, the wheel of dharma becomes fortunate. All of a sudden, new sciences came into manifestation because I went into that field. You know, new sciences and education, new everything is being manifested because I'm in this world. Yeah. And so it's all a matter of turning the wheel of dharma. It's the activity of dharma that comes with telepathy and intuition, and not reading books or getting paid or all those things that we have ambition to do, but things that actually come out of our heart, you know, and come through our mind, yeah, and are influenced by the incarnation of our soul, yeah. Those things happen because we're in a yuga that allows those things to happen. It's an environment that allows it to happen. And we're entering into that yuga. Yeah. So that's why right now I am helping people understand Jesus Christ. Yeah. The influence of Jesus Christ, using the term Jesus Christ, understanding reincarnation and Jesus Christ returning, and that the amount of energy that comes from Jesus Christ, is something that closes the door of the Kali Yuga. Yeah. It was a very big cycle. The beginning of our Kali Yuga was Jesus Christ. Yeah. And then the ending of the Kali Yuga is Jesus Christ. Yeah. So Jesus Christ takes it on, absorbs it, takes up as much of the sin that is going to be taking place, but created Christianity in the middle of it. Even though it did some really terrible things in the Catholic Church and all, but you can't imagine what it would have been like if it hadn't been ushered through with the addition of Jesus Christ and Buddhism, and the other forms of religion that came about, rather than the dictator reality of, all that was happening, because there was the Huns and the Mongols and all these things that were going on for world domination and complete elimination of the planet. So there was other things from other yugas under the influence during this Kali Yuga, and it made a big difference, a major difference. So we're going to be able to look back as time goes on and see history for what it really is, know that giants did exist, know that people are angelic in nature, giants reincarnated, not so good, All those things have to be understood for when we step into the next yuga, we're able to heal and understand and not be moved by the reincarnation of dictators, another Hitler, another Mussolini, because in their nature, they carry that yuga with them, and they want to maintain that yuga when they get back into incarnation. So that's why it's difficult to enter fully. It takes about 200 years to step from one yuga out of that one and into another. And it could go as much as 400 years. And that's not good. So my work is to make sure it's shortened as much as possible. And the teaching that you get is along the line of sacred geomancy, temple building, relating to the soul, and understand that we work on a telepathic level, and you're going to receive impressions from God as direction, and it's going to tell you to minimalize, to calm down, step back. Don't reach for that particular bullshit thing that you're constantly in your addiction to maintain, because that's the Kali Yuga. It's a place of addiction, fulfilling your senses, maintaining all sensory fulfillment, because you don't realize you reincarnate, and what you do in this life you're going to get in your next life if you don't do better. That's Kali Yuga. You lose everything. It comes down to any understanding of reincarnation. And it's for a few thousand years, and that's horrible. But if you look back in history, you'll see written in history is reincarnation. So way back in the past, during different yugas, reincarnation was the major principle behind why the yuga served in the way that it did, why people evolved in the way that they did, because they continued reincarnating and fostering harmlessness and spiritual development. And that's what we're going to do. All right? So let's pray. Okay. Okay, repeat after me. Lord Jesus the Christ, thank you for bringing me here. Lord Jesus the Christ, I open my heart to you today. I invite you to come inside. Lord Jesus the Christ, come and save my life. Receive me today as a child of God. Forgive all my sins and write my name in the book of life. I give myself to you, my spirit, my soul, my body. Receive me, Jesus the Christ. Now, the devil, the blood of Jesus is against you. I command you now to leave me. I do not belong to you. I am God's property. Leave my life. I disassociate myself from you. I renounce every evil covenant I have entered in with you. In the name of Jesus the Christ, I have received salvation. I am a child of God. Amen. Okay, just relax. Do Om every 10 seconds when I do. And listen to the words.
as many atoms as there are in 1,000 billion worlds. So many times I make reverent salutations to all the Buddhas of the three eras, to the Dharma, and to the excellent community. I pay homage to all the shrines in all the places in which the bodhisattvas have been. I make profound obeisance to the teachers and to those whom respectful salutation is due. This very day, I go for refuge. To the powerful protectors whose purpose it is to guard the universe, the mighty conquerors who overcome suffering everywhere. Wholeheartedly also I take my refuge in the dharma, which they have ascertained, which is the abode of security against the rounds of rebirth. Likewise, in the host of the bodhisattvas, I take my refuge. To the Buddha, for refuge I go. To the Dharma, for refuge I go. To the Sangha, for refuge I go. To the Buddha, for refuge I go. To the Dharma, for refuge I go. To the Sangha, for refuge I go. To the Buddha, for refuge I go. To the Dharma, for refuge I go. To the Sangha, for refuge I go. To all the truth teachings of the past, to all the truth teachings yet to be, to all the truth teachings that are now, my worship flows unceasingly. No other refuge than the truth. Refuge supreme is there for me. By the virtue of this truth, may grace abound and victory. all the brotherhoods that are. My worship flows unceasingly. No refuge but the brotherhood. Refuge supreme is there for me. By the virtue of this truth, may grace abound and victory.
Okay, just relax. Do you open your eyes? So here in Shambhala, this little place right here, this is where we're at right now. And the process of building Shambhala and all that went into it, the ability to pull this off, and there wasn't any, asking questions from anybody. It was a matter of establishing what needed to get done and building it and finding the location where it's going to be built and how it will be built and what it'll look like, along with all the sciences and tools and everything that I had to create in order to bring this about. All that. And using an average of 10 to 13 people on average, full time, they're helping me to establish this, and we're building this thing. And out of all this, it creates a future of activity. Every bit of it is part of service. Every bit of it is magnetic thought. The people who are in service to become part of Sangha are in an intuitive place to where their relationship reaches destiny. And what they're going to do in Sangha is for their life. And they're not in manifest destiny, always trying to figure out what are they going to do with their life. You know, in the future, when we get into service and we move into these different yugas, all that stuff will be gone. You know, and we'll be busy building these temples. You know, we'll be busy. You know, I mean, there's a lot of I built this one here. These are just in Tibet. You know, there's a lot that's being done, and in order to create this healthiness of human form, you know, of all the chakras on all the living human beings on this planet, it requires this science. And yet in all the other yugas, this science is an understanding. Yeah, it's common sense. You know, it's what we do. If you look back in all of our history, you'll see it everywhere, in the Great Pyramid and all the temples and everything. And it's just dwindled down to a small amount of people who can carry this message, this understanding, to any degree whatsoever. Yeah, but it's going to change dramatically, and it has to change because we're going into a really big shift, you know, in human needs, in human consciousness. Yeah, and it's not something that's part of a manifest destiny. You know, nobody in society is going to be pinned out to be an Elon Musk savior. You know, that kind of thing will go away. Right now, Elon and Amazon, all these people, movie stars and everything, they're all saviors. You know, you put your hat on there, you know, and you think that's what's doing it for us. But it's not. What's doing it for us is the ability of the planetary logos to usher in ideas and thought forms and create magnetic influences to create people who will gather together to create the new group of world servers and manifest in many different levels of our society so that we can move forward in the next 10 to 15, 20 years in ways we have no idea. And yet we are full on, head on, 100% going the other direction. You know, we're just slightly making it in the way in which I'm moving it. You know? But it's happening because it's a part of a science, it is the truth, and it is the outcome. So it's not about me maintaining my faith, you know, or something like that. There is faith in it, but faith in the obvious, you know. Not in, you know, oh, I hope everybody can change and we'll make this come about, you know, and, you know, we'll all be different. You know, not that. It's faith in the reality of God and how this works. And it has always worked. And with my work and the way that I'm doing it, and as you continue studying all this and how we might be able to change, you're going to see that it's my science, my work, that is making this change. Not somebody else, not something else. Yeah, it's specifically aligned to what it is I'm doing. Yeah, because I sit on throne seats where throne seats don't exist. Only by false prophets do they sit on those throne seats. You know, and I came and just jumped right in and took that seat and held that seat and maintain it. And build monasteries and build and then help the poor and feed the sick and the homeless. You know, doing all those things are part of a science that comes with the nature of a yuga that we're going into. Yeah. So, everybody, please enjoy.